The Territorial War became the strategic theory of Indonesian fighting after the first Dutch military aggression. At that time, with an army that did not yet exist, and a well-developed army, it was impossible for Indonesia to face Dutch ammunition head-on. After getting a piggyback from Britain, through military aggression, the Dutch succeeded in surging to occupy cities in West Java in a fast tempo without significant obstacles. Nevertheless, the mountainous and rural areas did not fall under Dutch control. On that basis, Colonel Abdul Haris Nasution, as regional commander of the Siliwangi division, chose to just let Dutch troops enter the city and then surround him from the outside. The aim of this strategy was to drain Dutch military resources which later became scattered in each city, and would be busy being used to maintain their own pockets of position. After all, even though the number of Dutch troops was large, they were still like little dots on a stretch of the island of Java. In his analysis, Colonel Nasution also revealed that the natural topography and culture of the Indonesian people must be used as the main base in maintaining and continuing to build strength. The Netherlands is exhausted, and only relieved when the Renville Agreement was signed. The Renville Agreement succeeded in getting around 40,000 Siliwangi personnel and all Republican government interior away from West Java. The result of guerrilla thought from Nasution was welcomed by the Commander-in-Chief Sudirman. In fact, President Sukarno said he would go on his own to lead the guerrillas if the Dutch were right to relaunch their military aggression. However, the Dutch, who had felt bad at facing Republican guerrillas, were able to find out and quickly take steps to anticipate. The guerrilla head must be cut off immediately before his body becomes longer and stronger. Incidentally, the communist rebellion was also breaking out in Madiun. The Dutch launched a surprise attack directly into the heart of the Republic's position in Yogyakarta. This attack took the code name Operation Cry, which literally means a crow operation. Once again the Dutch succeeded in showing their military superiority and weaponry. In just a matter of hours, the Republic's capital has been conquered. The President, Vice President and all high-ranking Republican officials were captured by the Dutch. However, President Sukarno, who was initially thought to be struggling and fighting when Yogyakarta was invaded, opened the path of provocation for gunfire on the spot, not until it happened. President Sukarno with Vice President Muhammad Hatta, and a number of other Republican officials actually let themselves be easily arrested. There was absolutely no panic movements or opponents' orders when Dutch troops stormed the presidential palace. General Spoor indeed managed to occupy Yogyakarta. However, the army did not succeed in destroying the head of the Republic. The head who was the target was still alive. Besides that, even though Sukarno Hatta could already be separated and exiled from his people, resistance still rose everywhere. In fact, against the Netherlands, now also comes pressure from abroad. The news that was spread about the Republican leaders had been held captive. Instead of being profitable propaganda, it became news that provoked opposition from many parties. In front of the UN Security Council, Ellen Paller said that this Dutch act was the next Pearl Harbor. One American senator even considered that the Dutch had insulted America, because they dared to attack even though the UN envoy was still in Yogyakarta where America was one of its members. As a result of his own actions, the Netherlands lost face before the international public. The Dutch, who had just suffered from being crushed by the Nazis, after being released, even carried out the same action. In the ranks of the TNI, what Nasution said was developed into the number one of strategy which immediately installed when Dutch aggression come. This territorial war strategy and TNI guerrilla combat tactics proved to be able to maintain the existence of the Republic. In fact, it also managed to break the orientation of the occupation which was run by the Dutch army. Under the guerrilla pressure, depressed Dutch soldiers seemed to run out of their common sense. They even held a clean-up to the villages. As a result, people are becoming increasingly antipathetic to the Dutch. And, this is not the impact expected by General Spoor from the results of his aggression. Previously, Spoor had instructed his troops to prioritize sympathetic steps and avoid using weapons against the people. Meanwhile, along with the people from village to village as the Republican warlord, General Sudirman facing the arena and lead TNI to the battlefield. In the city of Yogyakarta itself, Sri Sultan Hamengkubuwono IX refused to cooperate, let alone submit, even though the area was already occupied. This is also outside the Dutch calculations, because they thought Sri Sultan would support it. In Sumatra, Safruddin Proiranegra continued the government relay with total support from Aceh, so that it could be monitored from Delhi, and reached the UN forum that the Republic of Indonesia as a country remained. Similarly, all the people on various islands who were loyal to their respective regional leaders, they still wanted the Dutch to leave Indonesia. Sultan Hamid II also expressly stated that he was not willing to hold an inter-Indonesian conference with the Netherlands if the Republican position was abolished. The Dutch, who had already announced that the Republic no longer existed, and no longer needed to consider the negotiations or agreements that were held beforehand, were finally taken aback by the general attack on Yogyakarta. This attack seemed to be a loud trumpet which signaled that the Republic was still alive and exist. The Netherlands is increasingly cornered. They were surrounded again, and this time even more politically isolated. Their soldiers are exhausted. Their politicians are desperated. Its resources are getting thinner and thinner. The Crow released it only managed to peck one Republican head. Whereas the Indonesian nation has thousands of heads who are lived by the same soul. A soul called freedom. The Netherlands is indeed superior in weapons and combat. But the Netherlands did not win the war. And her throne must leave Indonesia and sit back to the banks of the Rhine river mouth only.